All right, so I am going to be going live tonight to talk about how to use social media to educate patients and doctors. I'm going to give a few minutes for people to hop in because we had to change live streams, but I hope you found me. And we'll get started in just a minute. I guess. No one's here though, but I guess they'll find me. Okay. I don't know why. Okay, good. Someone came in here, so that's good. All right, well, I'm gonna get started because people can watch this on repeat when they finally find me. So my name is Dr. Robin Roth. I am a radiologist specializing in breast and abdominal imaging. I am also a women's imaging fellowship director at a fabulous Girlfriend's Guide to Breast Cancer, Breast Health and Beyond, a successful podcast with over 30 episodes designed to help those navigating a breast cancer diagnosis. Perhaps you've seen me on PBS NewsHour raising my concerns to the head of the USPTF why their latest breast cancer screening recommendations don't go far enough. Or maybe you read my essay in Katie Couric's newsletter. Or maybe you even saw me on the Figs holiday photo shoot and commercial. But that's not really what I'm here to talk about tonight. Tonight, what I'm here to talk about is how I went from this awkward selfie in front of the workstation back in 2018 to a little bit over 5 years later, I've turned the Booby Docs into a brand and the most exciting chapter of my career that I could have never seen coming. And the best part is that I'm going to teach you how you could probably do the same by sharing your knowledge, your passions, your purpose, and all the things that make you you. So let me take you back to the beginning, and I'm going to share a little bit of my story because it becomes a big part of the Booby Docs. So I grew up in South Florida, very quiet and soft-spoken. I was always the shortest kid in my class due to my diagnosis of growth hormone deficiency, which unfortunately made me a frequent target of bullying. All I ever wanted in life was to be accepted and to fit in. I'd escape my reality through creative writing and poetry, which translated to being an entertainment editor of my high school newspaper and wanting to pursue a career in journalism. But something unexpected happened at the University of Florida orientation back in 2000. I was in a large auditorium with hundreds of incoming freshmen when the advisor asked the audience, by a show of hands, who here is pre-med? Almost everybody's hand went up, and I don't know what came over me, but my hand popped up. Can you go a little faster? I'm gonna just go a little faster here. Call it peer pressure or divine intervention, but my hand shot straight up. My two Jewish parents looked at me with confusion and also extreme satisfaction when they saw my hand pop up. You want to be a doctor? My mom asked. Sorry, let me just go. Surprised because I had never mentioned anything up to this point, and I asked her why not, taking her question more as a challenge. I've always been good at math and science, and besides, Dr. Nemery, my pediatric endocrinologist, really played a significant role in me becoming the person I am today. She smiled and looked at my dad with a grin. He smirked and said, "You're going to be on the Today Show one day. You're going to be a medical journalist. I can see it now." I didn't even know what that meant at the time, but turns out he wasn't that far off. So somehow I managed to not get weeded out with the rest of my classmates and made it through pre-med at the University of Florida. I got accepted to medical school at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine in the Bronx, New York. You know, the one that Ruth Gottsman recently made the donation to make it free for all incoming med students, but it cost me $500,000 of debt to pay for, that Albert Einstein College of Medicine. So, and when I say I found my people in med school, I found my people in med school. On the first day of med school orientation, we learned that there was a model in our class and who modeled in Italy before she came to med school. It didn't take me very long to find out that Adrian. It didn't take me long to identify Adrian as the model in the class. I remember we were taking the bus to med school orientation, and there was an empty seat next to me, and the 6-foot, beautiful, slender woman, friendly woman walks up to me and says, "Is the seat next to you taken?" I wanted to hate her because it just wasn't fair, but of course I let her sit next to me, and the rest is history. We giggled about our lives prior to this, and over the next 4 years we became inseparable, and we've developed a deep friendship, kind of inspired by JD and Turk from Scrubs, our favorite sitcom. So we both chose a career in radiology and then breast radiology. Adrian and I both unofficially couples matched for residency together in Philly, which is where I met my husband, who also happens to be a radiologist that she had met on the interview trail as well. There's lots of other synchronicities that I'm not going to get into, like the fact that my husband was at the University of Florida the same exact time and we did homecoming together, or that Adrian and Howard both had the same exact birthday, same exact year. But fast forward 20 years later, and now the 3 of us work together as radiologists in the same department. And Adrian becomes the S in the booby docs. So my husband and I settle down in Philadelphia and start our jobs together as attendings. We have a bunch of kids in a short time span, and before you know it, I'm suddenly a middle-aged attending with 3 kids in the middle of a COVID pandemic. I had everything that I wanted on paper. I had the dream job, working with my best friend, the dream partner, 3 kids, and a white picket fence, but I really was not satisfied. And I think this is something that a lot of people feel kind of at this midpoint in their career. So somewhere along the way, I lose myself. I had lost my sparkle. I remember talking to my therapist for a few years before this, saying I wanted to write something, but I didn't know what to write about. Am I a doctor? Am I a mom? Who am I? It was kind of like an existential crisis. Cue Barbie, what was I made for? This is when it gets interesting. So at this point, I know that social media is probably my outlet, but I don't know who I am. So I bite the bullet during Breast Cancer Awareness Month in 2018, and like most radiologists, I post an awkward selfie in front of the workstation explaining that my cousins were diagnosed with breast cancer in their 30s and found to be BRCA positive, and this is why I chose a career in breast radiology. I struggled to make a few posts during Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and I pretty much do nothing with it for the next few years. Until one late night during the COVID pandemic, when I was breastfeeding my third baby at some ungodly hour, and I laughed to myself because I realized I was surrounded by breasts all day, but I called them boobies because that's what my grandma always called them. And I call that my aha moment. A light bulb went off in my brain. I texted Adrian and I said, I'm changing the name to the Booby Docs. It's going to be a joint account. We'll be 40-something best friend breast radiologists who work together while trying to balance 3 kids each. We are essentially our own audience. To which she responded an immediate yes. And to which my husband responds, oh no, what are you guys up to these days? But the rest is history. And we found our voice, and we were having so much fun. Immediately, I knew we were onto something. Our message was resonating with young people and women. Our first post was us getting our COVID vaccines, and then I convinced her to make a silly little TikTok about breast cancer screening recommendations, and then another silly little TikTok about who needs breast MRI. But of course, our most viral video was a silly one about med students rotating through radiology that had about 4 million views. But what do you know? People liked us. We were communicating our knowledge in a fun and approachable way directly to the patient, the people that needed the information the most, as well as healthcare professionals who aren't taught enough about breast health during their training. Our message was resonating with mostly women, many of them who have a personal history of breast cancer or who are at high risk, kind of like ourselves. But we were talking about the recommendations in a fun, we weren't spewing off the recommendations in a boring manner. We were jumping on TikTok trends, and as 40-year-old women, we were doing the screening right alongside of you. We took you along for our first mammogram and our first breast ultrasound for our dense breast tissue. A few months later, we made our TV debut on the Today Show with Hoda and Jenna, but it doesn't technically count because it was only the introduction, and I don't think that counts as my dad's prophecy yet. We shared our story on Good Day Philadelphia. People were starting to notice things are going great. At this point, even though it's the Booby Docs, it's pretty much me creating all of the content. But I felt more comfortable knowing that I could do it with both of our names on it. It was, is it Robin or is it Adrian? Spoiler alert, it was always me. I found our confidence in our voice, realizing that most of our followers were women. We started an Instagram live series called Women Crush Wednesday, which eventually becomes our podcast. We talked to breast cancer specialists and thrivers, asking for their tips going through a breast cancer diagnosis. By the way, starting a podcast is much easier than you think, and I'll give you my tips at the end for starting a podcast. But the Booby Docs is starting to snowball now. Now we have a bunch of followers and TV appearances, a podcast. Things are looking great. Until one day, Adrian's dad unfortunately gets diagnosed with cancer and passes away. And she realizes at that point that social media is not for her. She's got too many things on her plate and she backs out. At the time, I thought it was the worst thing that could happen but in the end, Adrian leaving the Booby Docs was probably for the best. She was much more private than me and also wanted to keep the account strictly about breast cancer, whereas I saw it as a platform for anyone that has breasts, which is everyone. And even though it was the Booby Docs plural, it was always me running the show behind the facade of two people. I always say that she gave me my wings and pushed me out of the nest solo. So after she stepped away in 2022, my platform evolved even further. I recognized the powerful women's health platform that I had developed. This was more than just about breasts. This was about women empowerment. I wanted to talk about real issues that are affecting women, like sexism, mental health, postpartum depression, having miscarriages, all the things that us women collectively endure but are too ashamed or embarrassed to talk about. The more I let people in and shared some of the things I was struggling with, the more it resonated with my audience and the more that they listened. The Booby Docs has really been about me falling back in love with myself and getting my sparkle back. It's about honoring the little girl that loved writing and creating and finding a way to incorporate it into breast health and women's health education. It's been about finding my confidence in my voice, and it's pushed aside the decade-long I was too scared of what people would think. But what do people think? And that's an important question that you're probably wondering. And here's a truth in life that I only learned recently once I turned 40 years old, is that you're never going to please everyone. The only person that you need to please is yourself. And the earlier you can accept that to be true, the more authentic you can be, the more authentic you can live your life, and the happier you'll ultimately be. So there are always going to be people that don't like what you're doing and may not be afraid to tell you this, especially in the beginning when you're starting something new. I've been called cringy and offensive by men, even administrators in my department, to which I say, don't follow me. Old me would have never done that. Okay, so that's when I talk about the confidence that you start to build. And honestly, I think it's my authenticity that separates me from other doctors, specifically radiologists on social media. We are so much more than our profession, and I think that's the important take-home point about social media, especially for medical professionals. I was having this conversation the other day with Dr. Tiffany Chan, who was moderating this conversation. And if you don't follow Dr. Chan, you're missing out. But she said, what you do is so brave. You look at the camera, you talk directly to your audience, it's raw and it's unfiltered. I could never do that. And I never really thought of it that way, but I took a step back and you know what I said? It is brave, but you could do this too. It just has to be authentic to you, and you have to care less about what people think. And I think that's one of the hardest things about getting older and also social media is learning to let go of what people think. It's so easy to look at people on social media and to think that they have it all, but nobody has it all. And I think we need to normalize talking about that as well. What I want to see is the messy middle, which is why I choose to share things that I struggle with. I wish I started this platform earlier. I struggled to breastfeed 3 kids before I even started it, which is such a shame. I transferred residencies, I had a miscarriage, I failed physics, I transferred programs. All of these things were an important part of my career that you guys didn't get to see. And I wish I documented those things so that people can see the success did not happen overnight. And trust me, social media success will not happen overnight. It took years of being under 1,000 followers. It takes dedication and consistency. You can see I was stuck under 1,000 for years. And finally, I hit 11,000 on Instagram and 15,000 on TikTok today. But trust me, social media success will not happen overnight. People often ask me, how do I have time to do this? And the truth is, I make time. In the beginning, I would stay up really late at ungodly hours, perseverating over TikTok. I wanted to just get right. Ultimately, I ended up stepping down clinically so I could focus on the booby docs because I am just that passionate about it. And now that I've unlocked my voice and my platform, my creative portals have been open. I am constantly surrounded by inspiration, and it's hard to even quiet it down sometimes. If something happens at work with a patient, I write it down and come back to it later, knowing that it could be an impactful post. But I will let you know that social media is not for the faint of heart. You have to have a thick skin, or at least a message that is strong enough that you'd be willing to subject yourself to the internet. There is a lot of misinformation out there, especially with regards to breast cancer. And one of the big parts of my platform is trying to combat that misinformation head on, which in the beginning, again, I was nervous and hesitant to call people out for spreading misinformation. But at the end of the day, I think I'm doing our society a service by calling out misinformation and knowing that I am doing the right thing. So people often ask me, how do you start? Well, it's simple. You just start posting. But the thing is, when you start social media, there's a few important questions you need to ask yourself. Number one is, who are you? Right? That's a complicated question. It's more than just your name, okay? I would encourage you to think outside the box and not just use your name, because you, at the end of the day, are a brand. So try to incorporate some of your personalities or some of your hobbies that you like outside of your profession. Do you like to cook? Are you in a band? For instance, my friend, Dr. Dana Ataya, who's an amazing breast radiologist, is also an extremely talented musician. I told her name should be Dr. Dana Rocks. Our breast surgery fellow is 35 years old and just got diagnosed with breast cancer. And she pulled me aside the other day and said, I think social media is for me. And I said, you are the patient surgeon. One of my mentees is another radiologist who happens to be a member of the LGBTQ community. Initially, she said she wanted to leave her gender identity out of it because she was nervous about what people think or the hatred that she might get. And then I expressed to her that she has a really important niche and an opportunity to reach a community that needs her expertise, and she settled on Dr. Rad Idea. I even encourage my Disney-loving radiologist husband, to make the Disney Rad Dad, but he won't do it. But I promise you, if you slide into my DMs, I will help you come up with an amazing username. But by incorporating your passions and purpose into your platform, the more authentic and interesting your platform will be, not to mention personally and professionally rewarding. I would also recommend this is controversial, but I would recommend leaving your institution out of it, especially if you don't plan on being there for life, because once you have your institution involved, then you're gonna have to run every post by your social media department. And again, you may transfer jobs and you want this to be your brand. So I would leave your institution out of it if you have that option. Next, you really need to identify who is your audience. Is it patients? Is it med students? Is it something not medical at all? And what is your message? What do you stand for? Are you passionate about advocacy or breast health disparities? I would say, there's a slide that I want to show. So actually, this was interesting. I posed this question to my followers, trying to get a sense of who are my followers. So my followers are mostly patients. You could see that 62% of my followers are patients. There's also a lot of other healthcare professionals like doctors. I know there's a lot of technologists as well, some students, as opposed to Dr. Chanimal, who's on the call as well. She has more of a medical trainee and future doctor audience. So it's really, I think that is last. So you need to identify your audience and what is your message? What do you stand for? I would also encourage you to not go on social media with the intention of becoming an influencer or even a FIGS ambassador, because for most people that won't happen, but it can. I will tell you, I have made a few $1,000s off speaking engagements for my platform, as well as I'm starting to get paid partnerships and a little bit of chump change I made on some viral videos, but certainly you're gonna wanna keep your day job. But I will say that most of the opportunities that I have gotten have been by putting myself out there. I've sent out pitches to TV producers that have landed me on Good Day Philadelphia, and also sliding into people's DMs. For instance, 2 years ago, I was dead set on becoming a FIGS ambassador. I applied to the company website several times without any response. So what did I do? I messaged the CEO on Instagram expressing my interest to do an Instagram takeover with them for Breast Cancer Awareness Month. She excitedly said yes, and the following year I was invited to be on their holiday commercial. So like as the kids say, being Delulu is a Salulu. I will also say that initially you're gonna wanna focus on one or two platforms. I have the biggest following on TikTok. I just hit 15,000 today, but that won't matter anyways soon. So if I was to do it again, I would definitely focus my attention on Instagram and YouTube. I think Twitter is really great for networking and professional development. Certainly you're gonna want to live tweet from any conference you go to. Also, cross-posting across platforms is very important. I make every few posts an impactful tweet that I make visually pleasing by using an app called Canva. And then I post that on my Instagram and even my TikTok, so that drives people to all the platforms. Also, I will say that there is room enough for everybody. So collaboration over competition. Like I said, Dr. Chanimal is a breast radiologist, and we both do similar things, but in different ways. So like I said, she focuses more on medical trainees. I focus more on patient and doctor education. So learning where you fit in and learning to collaborate with other people on the internet that you appreciate and admire. So next slide. So I asked also, one of the things I asked my audience was, what are some things that you like about my platform? A lot of people were saying that it was open and honest and fun, being real and human, patient-centered, calling out misinformation, fun. It's kind of crazy to me because nothing about breast cancer is fun, but if you do it in a fun way, then you are able to reach a younger, much larger audience. And about 10% of people get their health information on social media, and that number is only going to increase as we have a younger generation of doctors and patients. So I will tell you, my top 5 tips for improving your social media is finding your voice and incorporating your personality and your passions, learning your audience. Do not be afraid to put yourself out there. Be active across, the platforms that you choose, and also have fun and be authentic. So if you want to start a podcast, here's what you need to know. It's much easier than you think to start a podcast. All you really need is some recording software. In the past, I've used Zoom and Zencaster, but I finally settled on Riverside. You could even do it on YouTube Live. Once you have that recording, you may or may not choose to do any editing, which I usually do. And then I use a website called Riverside, where at the click of the button, I use a website called Red Circle, where at the click of the button, you can distribute your podcast to dozens of streaming platforms, and poof, you have a podcast. So what's next for the Booby Docs? Well, in a lot of ways, I feel like I'm just getting started, because now that I found my voice, I feel unstoppable. I'm writing a book, and there's probably more TV in my future. I always want to be a practicing radiologist because that is a huge part of me and my platform. But beyond that, the world is my oyster, and I'm very excited for what's to come. So stay tuned and follow the Booby Docs for more of the breast information. So I'm going to open this up to any questions in the audience, if there's anyone there that is out there besides Dr. Chanimal. I really love it. I mean, I think that that's what shows, is that what a lot of my audience will say is that you can tell that I enjoy it, and that I'm not just doing it for any personal or financial gain, that this is really just something I am super passionate about. What advice would you give for explaining the importance or fun of social to many people in the industry who are fearful or dislike social media? So I would say that, look at the doors that it's opened for my career, right? It may not be for everybody. I understand that some people are more private than others, but if you are the type of person that likes to share knowledge, you like to storytell, then social media can be for you. And there are lots of ways to do it. Like like I said, there are lots of ways to be a radiologist on social media. You could show cases, you could talk about your path to getting there. I think all of that is interesting, and there is a lane for everybody. I would say, like, as long as you have an important message and are, steadfast in that, then don't let other people dissuade you from being your true self and putting yourself out there on social media. Like I said, you're never going to please everybody. So just accept that to be true. And then I think everyone on social media, I think that's the biggest truth to learn for social media. Thank you. Working, which is hard. We really do so much more than our profession. Okay. How do you come up with your content? It takes a lot of creativity. Well, that's a great question. Like I said, now that I have unlocked my creative portals, I feel like everything is content. They were joking about it. Like today I did change my bandage, it was with me. All the things that I'm doing are part of me, right? So now it's not just about breasts, it's about my own health. I had carpal tunnel surgery, and that surgery got infected, and I took you through that journey with me, and I was an inpatient in the hospital, and I think that is part of the story as well. So my story is constantly evolving and writing itself, and that's the thing. I think that's what keeps it interesting, and not so just, you're not getting just breast health now. You're getting, a 40-year-old overworked, stressed out doctor, mom that is trying to balance it all. And I think that's part of the story as well. In a few weeks, I'm getting my colonoscopy, and don't you worry, I will be posting about that as well. I recorded my skin check. I do all, that's what I'm saying, is that once you identify your audience or who is following you. So a lot of, young to middle-aged women who are going through probably the same things that I am, then I think that is a big source of creativity. Also following other creators and seeing what works and what you like about other creators and what you don't like. Jumping on TikTok trends is always the easy way to do it. I know it can be really hard at times to videotape yourself and put it out there, but you get more comfortable with it. Everything, even if I look back at my old videos, I can't look at it without cringing, but you, like everything else, you get better. But I think it's cool to look back at some of those older ones and remember how hard it was to come up with that topic, or how hard it was to make that video, and it just gives you that much more pride. I will also say that most of my videos, I script out a lot of things because I am not a good speaker off the cusp. So if I have something I want to talk about, let's say even about breast density, I'll write it down. I use some kind of teleprompter app that helps me remember my thoughts when I'm on the fly. So that makes it easier for me. I also do all my video and recording on my phone, and then I edit it in an app called CapCut. There's lots of different video editing software, but then you could use that video across YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, TikTok, Facebook Reels, so you could really get a lot of bang for your buck with each post. Do you get any negative comments on socials? Yes. If you do, how do you deal with it? Do you ever get fewer likes than you want on a post that you spend a lot of time on? Yes. Okay, so I've had it all. I mean, I've been called a bully because I call out people that spread misinformation. I've been called unprofessional, which I know that to be not true because, again, my 11,000 followers would probably disagree. So I always, following me is a choice. You don't have to follow me. So I kind of take it like that if I always politely say, thanks, but no thank you. I don't need the follower. But I surprisingly, I think, get a lot less hate than probably other people on the internet. And yeah, it can be really frustrating sometimes when you get less likes on a post that you expected, that you thought was going to be really a hit. And I try not to get disheartened. I try to, sometimes it's just, who knows, if the wind was blowing the wrong way, that makes something not take off, and vice versa. There could be something that you're really didn't spend that much time on at all, and it totally blows up. And there's not really, there's you could understand the algorithm, but at the end of the day, it's just luck. It's also trying to not get too frustrated when something doesn't hit that you worked hard on, and seeing what you can learn from that post that wasn't maybe as successful as you would have liked. But there's always, sometimes I even take it down and post it, a few months later, and a lot of times that will cure the whatever lack in attraction that I'm getting. Any other questions? Tiffany, thank you for being such an active participant in this talk. I hope that everyone has found this helpful. And like I said, I'm going to be sharing this recording. My DMs are open. I'm very active on Instagram, and I'm always looking to help people with their social media, or if they're, thinking about joining, I can help you come up with a voice or a name. And yeah, it does take time. I'd be lying if I said it didn't take time. Like I said, I cut down clinically so I could focus on this, because I can see that this is definitely going to be some part of my career that I really enjoy, and I think it's worth it. So I'll leave it at that. Do you have any questions?
Nothing that Tiffany did.
Nothing? Okay. I think we answered them all. Yep, Tiffany was a great moderator, and thank you all for joining, and thanks for watching if you are watching this later. Follow the Booby Docs for more of the breast information. Bye.